All right, so hi everyone, and welcome to this 30-minute mini summit about the Jira two-way sync with Favro. So, well, the first question is, why do you need this two-way sync? John, if you put on, this image of companies moving from a more traditional setup towards more of business agility, then what you can the situation that you typically have here is that some teams will be using Favro because they want to work in a more autonomous way instead of, let's say, a more centralized way. But Favro is not an island. It exists in an ecosystem of various tools. So Favro have a lot of integrations with different tools. One of the most common ones to be used is probably Slack, but another which is also very commonly used is the integration with Jira. And we have done a lot of updates to this integration recently. So this mini summit is very timely. And we're going to go through basically 3 scenarios today, but it's kind of like 4 scenarios. I mean, one scenario when people use it, it's kind of just to turn it on to to sync some data over to Favro and then turn it off. But this is a two-way sync. It's a live two-way sync. So you can use this to have Favro and Jira, really working together. And one of the typical situations is that you have, engineers using Favro, and they need to collaborate very tightly with, let's say, marketing teams because they're doing releases, in a very frequent way. And in this way, you can get this team to work in a very integrated fashion. Another typical situation that John will also address is when, for example, engineers are using Jira, but management, they want to work in a more agile fashion, and they want their work that's done in Favro, for example, running OKRs and various things for portfolio goal setting. They want that to be connected to what happens in the teams, and you can also do that with this integration. And then finally, and maybe the most common use case is that you will have, for example, a QA team, and they are running their bug tickets in Jira. And what the development team wants to do is that they want to run much more agile and tight process, running Favro, and they want to bring those escaped bugs that are found as Jira tickets, and they want to have them integrated so they can also commit to them when they are doing their sprint planning or similar. So that is probably the most common case. But what we're going to do now today is to look how this works in practice. So with that said, over to you, John.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Yeah, so I'm Jon Leslie, Agile coach for Cove Insights. And those 3 practical examples, I'm going to start with the one that Patrick just mentioned, where you have a development team working in Favro, but you may still have QA working in Jira for a multitude of reasons. Maybe they're so hardwired into Jira, they have reporting in Jira, so on and so forth. So it's absolutely possible with this two-way sync. And I'm going to actually show you that two-way sync tied to a automation. Okay, so here we have, first I'll start out with a development team. So you have a development team working in Favro like this, and they find a bug. So since the cards can exist in multiple places in Favro, what they can do is they can take any of these bugs that they find. Maybe they're escape bugs that weren't found in the sprint, weren't fixed in the sprint. They're working in a very agile way. So that's going to go to an escaped bug backlog. So we could just simply add that from here if you chose to. And that's going to show up in maybe this internal QA team's escape bug backlog that looks like this. So this is just the catch-all for those escape bugs for the development teams working in Favro, all of the development teams. It could be literally hundreds of them, right? So this board is synced to Jira, but through an automation. So if I switch this bug backlog, so you can see, we have Favro has many customers that are actually moving from Jira for their bug work even to Favro. As you can see here, you can easily do that with custom fields and whatnot. You can even switch this from a Sheets view, as we're seeing it here, to visualize that bug workflow on a Kanban. So here's a very traditional bug workflow, all the way from found to triage to claim fixed and hopefully fixed. Now, the idea here is that you probably don't want to sync bugs to Jira if they're not verified bugs. So you might have an embedded QA person on a Scrum team, for example, development team, who's verifying that escape bug ahead of time before it even syncs to Jira, to that centralized QA team. So in that case, say a new bug comes in like this, and the QA analyst or the embedded QA analyst on that team verifies that this is actually a real bug. It's not a duplicate, so on and so forth. You can just pull that over to bug verified like this, or change the status from the Sheets view over here. Doesn't matter, it's the same thing. And as soon as he did that, as you can see here, it automatically replicated this bug as a card in Jira. And it created, now and forever, as long as this bug exists, a two-way sync between the two. So if the description changes here, the description will also change in Jira and vice versa. Same thing with statuses, resolutions, assigned team members, so on and so forth. And I'm also going to show you how it can actually track the movement on the board from status to status. So the way this was done was with a very simple integration. I'll bring that up. Simply saying that when a card changes status in this bug backlog from open to bug verified, we're simply going to send that card now to Jira, to this particular server, to this particular Jira project, to this issue type. It's as simple as that. And that's true of really all of the integrations and automations in Favro, is that they're really meant to be easy enough to be configured by the team members themselves. You don't need a centralized administrator, maybe like you would need in Jira, to do it for you. Okay, so that's a good example of a development team working with centralized QA still in Jira while the development team stays in Favro. Now I'm going to show you another example that Patrick mentioned. Maybe you have a marketing team and they're working out of a marketing backlog that looks like this in Favro, but they need to work with maybe a development team that's in Jira to keep those releases in sync, especially in a SaaS type situation. Everything needs to stay in sync for those frequent releases, including marketing and development. Or maybe it's an external marketing team working in Jira. It would be the same thing. So here, for example, I have this entire board now synced to Jira, not through an automation, but anytime a card actually appears on this board, it's automatically going to be replicated in Jira, just as you saw through the automation. I have a couple of them already synced here. This email blast, for example, you can see that the priority is medium. It's currently not started. And I have that particular card here, but it's also in Jira. If I look at it in Jira, it looks like this. You can see it's in the same exact status, to do. Now, if this team that we're working with, again, it's an external team, or maybe it's a development team that needs to work on this email blast for a particular piece of technology. You know, this whole concept in Favro of working on the same cards and instead of creating silos via separate tickets. And they move this from to do to in progress here in Jira. That same movement, status change, movement on the board is mapped to the Favro board. So you can see it moved automatically from to do to in progress, since the card also exists in the backlog, which becomes essentially a portfolio, if you will, for the marketing team. They can see that this moved from to do to in progress, even though it didn't even move originally on the Favro board. It moved first on that Jira board and mapped through the mapped integration, moved here on the Favro board, and then updated the status back in the backlog. So same thing as if I move it here on the Favro board to for review, maybe eventually to done, like this, you can see it changing the status back in the backlog. And then if I also go to that same card synced in Jira, there you go. You can see it automatically moved to done over here on the Jira board. So perfect two-way sync. If I move this back, it's going to move back in Favro. That you don't lose any of the status changes or data changes moving back and forth on this particular card or any of the cards once they're synced. Now, a third example, so that was a marketing team either working with an external creative agency or a development team that's in Jira. Now, the third example is if you are in a portfolio situation or a program situation where you want to be driving strategic initiatives maybe from a portfolio level. So I'm working in this portfolio collection, and I've actually added the marketing backlog here just for the sake of example, but you can see that this board also exists in a marketing team collection. So it doesn't have to exist here, but for the sake of the example, I have it here so that you can see the movement from the team level, starting in Jira even, all the way up to the portfolio backlog, tracking that driving the execution through Jira maybe, but having those high level changes reflected in a portfolio backlog and also in a portfolio Kanban like this, moving through those high level stages for all of your strategic initiatives. So for example, I have this European launch campaign sitting here in my portfolio backlog under market changes, how we're going to respond to current market changes. So maybe we want more exposure in Europe. We have this European launch campaign that we want to do. We can see that both here in the backlog and on the board, this is currently on the portfolio Kanban at the analysis stage. Now, if I open up a different swim lane here back on this marketing sprint board, and I also open up the marketing backlog again, you can see that this same initiative, European launch campaign, which originated here, also exists here in this marketing backlog. And the marketing team broke that down into all the deliverables necessary for this launch campaign to be executed, to actually launch. So up here in this swim lane, we have those campaigns, those high-level strategic initiatives flowing from start to finish. And down here in this swim lane, which we already saw, we have the actual deliverables flowing from start to finish. So up here at this level, say, for example, we have this European launch campaign. This is also synced to that Jira board. I can move it here at the team level, or it could be moving here in Jira, also at the team level. So say European launch campaign moves from to do to in progress in Jira. Back here in Favro, you can see that it replicated that movement, both here in the campaign swim lane or strategic initiative swim lane for this marketing team. So we can see European launch campaign here. We can see that it changed this to in progress, right? And maybe now this becomes another way you can another example of driving things from the portfolio level. Maybe now it's deemed by the C-level, the C-suite people that this is now high priority. And you can see since this is the same thing here as here, it automatically changed the priority to high down here at the team level. And it would replicate that also to Jira. Maybe now these deliverables need to be upgraded in priority because of that parent change. And you can see that when this European launch campaign moved from to do to in progress on the Jira board, it also changed the status in the portfolio backlog to implementation, from analysis to implementation, and also moved that same card in the portfolio Kanban from analysis to implementation here. So we're tracking on two different levels, all the way up to the portfolio based on movement, the execution at the team level starting in Jira. So now if this moves based on all of those deliverables being done, if this now moves to for review and eventually to done like this, you can see a couple of things automatically happen thanks to that sync and some automations firing off to tie this all together. You can see that some things happened here back in Favro as well. So we can see that this has now moved to done in this campaign swim lane. It changed the status here back in the backlog to done. And it automatically changed at the portfolio level from implementation to executive review. So it's not done yet from an executive standpoint, from a portfolio standpoint. It then goes into an executive review stage that's also seen here in that portfolio Kanban. And eventually, once hopefully this passes the review, it moves to live, which could further drive something down at the team level. So everything's synced from the team level, starting maybe even in Jira, maybe up to a program, all the way up to a portfolio, as you see in this example. Now, from a road mapping perspective, what you can do in these portfolio Kanban boards, and I have an example of it here, is you can take those same cards as they're moving through those portfolio stages, and this can actually act as a roadmap too. It can actually act as your portfolio or strategic roadmap, just by simply putting dates on those cards, start and end dates, and switching this to a timeline view. And now, without any additional work really, this portfolio Kanban, driven from that portfolio backlog, being driven at the team, at the execution level by the teams, can automatically be switched to a visual roadmap on a timeline like this. So there you have it, 3 practical examples of the two-way Favro Jira sync. Back to you, Patrick.
Thanks, John. You know, that was very clear. And in the meantime, we've been having a few questions. One was, is it possible to really sync, any kind of, boards from, from Jira to Favro? And, basically everything can be synced. And in the Favro help, you will have detailed instructions for how this works. Now, this is definitely, one of those things where our team can be very helpful. So if you have, any questions about the Jira Favro two-way sync, or if you would like us to help you with some examples or best practices how to do this, or just very hands-on actually setting it up for you, just being our team, and we will help you. Thank you so much for being part of this mini summit.
Thank you. Bye-bye.